Well, jury selection begins in the trial of a man accused of murdering a real estate agent. 49-year-old Beverly Carter was found dead in Arkansas in the fall of 2014 after telling her husband she was leaving to show a house. Well, this man, Aaron Lewis, pleading not guilty to capital murder and kidnapping charges in her death. Our legal panel is here. Lise Reel, a Fox News legal analyst and author of the upcoming book, The Newsmakers. Bob Bianchi is a criminal defense attorney, a former head county prosecutor, and a trial attorney. Bob, I want to start with you first because you have, as a prosecutor and a district attorney, dealt with real estate agents, warning them about the kind of dangers of that line of work.
Yeah, when I was prosecutor, even in an urban suburban community, there were a lot of real estate agents that became vulnerable targets. They were soft targets for people who wanted to rape them, rob them, or commit murder. So we went around to all the real estate agents. We were actually asked to show how can we target harden these folks so that when they go into these vulnerable environments where they're by themselves, they don't become victims of crime. So this is not unusual.
This woman left her house, said, I'm going to go show a house, and 3 days later they find her body.
And to just go with Bob's point, he says in a question, a reporter asked him, why? He said, why Beverly? He says, because she was just a woman that worked alone, a rich broker. So exactly going to your point, he and his wife, who's now in prison, is going to testify against him, really planned this against Beverly because exactly that. She was a broker, she was by herself, and they targeted houses to look at where there was no security or film, in the house.
Yeah,
exactly.
You mentioned that his wife is going to be testifying against him. She was apparently involved in the plot. She got a 30-year sentence. Doesn't that basically seal the case against the guy who's charged here?
It certainly is very, very helpful. And you're probably thinking, what about spousal privilege? How can that happen? How could she take the stand? Because of statements like this that he made to the media, follow me here, he made to the media, he waives his right to spousal privilege about her. And she spoke with the media as well. So it's under Arkansas law, it's a little bit different, but she can testify as to the scheme, not just what she observed, but even what they said. Now, in cross-examination, Bob, agree with me or not, they're going to go after and say, well, what are you getting out of this lady? Maybe getting a reduction of about 30 years if you testify against this guy. But if she can withstand that cross-examination, it's great. But
the police apparently made a mess of this case. A whole lot of the evidence that they found, they found the victim's hair in the trunk of his car, that kind of thing. They're not going to be able to use that because he was in the patrol car. He said, I want a lawyer. And they went ahead with an investigation, with an interrogation anyway. Yeah,
listen, this is an art form, and it's not unusual in any homicide or any other investigation for that matter where somebody invokes their rights. What's important is that the police, and this is an age-old conundrum, they're usually looking to make an arrest in most instances where the lawyers or the prosecutors are looking to push that ball past the goal line to conviction. So when I had my team go out, there were lawyers at every single step and stage to make sure that the convictions were secure, the evidence was secure. But what was really strange here...
Didn't happen.
You agree, Lisa? Yeah. Is that the search warrants, forget about the statements.
Right.
The search warrants that were actually signed by a judge, which have a presumption of validity in the law, were actually thrown out as well. So his statements were thrown out, and the evidence found in the trunk with duct tape and hair of the victim were thrown out. That is a really disastrous thing for the prosecution.
It is bad for the prosecution, but they also have cell phone evidence, they have records of the cell phone. They have this strange evidence in part in that interrogation. The interrogation itself was not actually thrown out, not the whole thing. There's a part of it where the two defendants are where the victim is talking to her husband saying, pay that ransom. That's all going to be played in his interrogation. It's a very strange thing, but I think when all comes to, together, it's a very strong case for this prosecution.
But could we see one of those strange cases where the wife, who was apparently an accomplice and not the ringleader here, she's going to jail. She's in jail for 30 years. Could he walk because of this police misconduct and some of the evidence that's been tossed out?
If you didn't have some of this other evidence, if you didn't have the wife, if you didn't have the cell phone records, if you didn't have, his fleeing from the scene, he wrecks a car,
yeah.
The police are after him, he flees from that, so that's consciousness of guilt. If you didn't have all of that, then yeah, you'd be in trouble.
Well, what the prosecutor is going to do in this particular case is you never want to rely your case on the testimony of a witness, one who got a benefit,
right,
and one who is a convicted murderer. That said, I agree with Lise that there's so many other pieces, including the phone records they got and the emails that they received, that are going to be able to tie in that he lured her there, and I think her testimony would be compelling. But John, let's not make a mistake.
And if he takes a stand, it's going to be hard for him to take the stand because in his defense because he's got a lot of criminal convictions. So those those would come in as to his character if he takes a stand.
And her body, the victim's body, found at a cement plant, buried where he used to work. It is an awful case. We'll let our viewers know what happens. Bob Bianchi, Lise Wheel, thank you both.
Thank you.
Jenna.